Hey there, and welcome to Conversations Worth Your While. It's the podcast where we dig into ideas and insights that help you to unleash what you were born to bring. I chat with heart-led experts and I ask the questions that I know you're thinking about. And then we explore conversations that will spark growth, shift perspectives, and help you to show up fully in life. Today, we are exploring how to use your past to shape a meaningful future. And this conversation is worth your while because over a lifetime, we collect experiences and stories, but we're not usually pausing to see how they connect or what they've shaped in us. So if you're ready to move on to something new, but you don't really know what that is quite yet, and you're tired of trying to fix yourself, and instead you'd rather find yourself, well, today we're going to share a creative process for reflecting on your past and uncovering insights that will actually guide your next steps. I'm your host, I'm Linda Bucher, and if the life you're in no longer fits, this space is for you. Because through this podcast and through my coaching, I guide you to shed what no longer fits, to reconnect with your gifts, and bring your life into alignment with who you are and what you want. And if that sparks something within you, you can find me at lindabucher.com. Okay, once again, our topic today is how to use your past to shape a meaningful future. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Lisa Culhane. She is a story doula and a life coach, and she's making her big, beautiful ripples by helping people in midlife and beyond to make sense of the life they've lived so that they can step into what's next with clarity and purpose. So, Lisa, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I'm delighted that you're here. Can you just share a little bit more about, what you do, who you serve, and these ripples that you are making in the world?
You bet. So as a guided autobiography coach and a life coach, I use guided autobiography as like a step-by-step process to help people write their stories. And I do this using themes and instruction and worksheets, and a writing method that makes this writing your stories really fun and accessible. And I do this because I found um, that people's stories have so much resonance with them. It is from that place of looking back and looking at our stories that we're able to move forward in a really confident, purposeful, meaningful way.
Well, that is 100% true. I know I lived that. I remember, feeling completely unfulfilled, not knowing what I was supposed to be doing when I was in midlife. Well, I'm probably still in midlife, but I am talking about 17 years ago. So, or even before that.
It's a long time. We're
It's a
in a
long
lot
time.
midlife for a long
Yeah, to
time.
not really know, like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What should I be doing? And when I was going through life coach training, when I was leaving my career behind in the corporate world and going through life coach training, one of the things I had to do in the intake was to bullet point my life story. And I had never been asked to do that before. I was like, huh, all right. So I started bullet pointing my life story. And you're going to talk about, I know in a few minutes, about like these dots that we connect, right? In maybe a little different way than how I connect, but I found a connection. And the connection between all those bullet points, right? They're literal dots, like bullet points. I realized I had been viewing my life from a victim's perspective. And that was a new awareness that I had never had before. And had I not done that exercise, I would never have like had that awareness. And without that awareness, I never would have been able to go, whoa, all right, how do I now shift? How do I want to live the rest of my life? So connecting these bullet points is huge.
Absolutely. I hear that all the time from the people who take these classes, that especially this sense that they've been telling their story in a way that doesn't serve them.
Mm.
A victim, oh, woe was me vantage point.
Yeah.
And there's always another way to tell your story.
Mhm.
And I, again, like I've had people say the initial drafts were dominated by dark imagery or intensity. And as revision of their story just allowed balance and meaning and light to emerge. And they came out feeling like those old emotional triggers that they'd been telling their story again and again and just retriggering, they realized that they had actually succeeded. And so they were no longer defined by they're no longer defined by the struggle.
Woo!
They're defined by the success. And that's what you did too.
That is what I
You
did.
had to rewrite your story.
I had to rewrite my story. I call it rewriting history. It was the same facts. It was just the way I looked at them. Um,
Absolutely.
I looked at them from a hero's perspective instead of the victim's perspective. And the difference there is the victim says, this happened to me. And the hero says, when this happened, I did this. Because you always did something when the shit hit the fan and the crap came along and the hardship or whatever. So you always did something. And if you look back and say, well, what did I do? Now you can start to see yourself as an active participant instead of a victim in the land of hoping and waiting. And it's a huge transformation. I
Absolutely. It's that evolution from pain and imagery toward perspective and integration, and of course, self-compassion.
yeah.
Wow, look what you overcame.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. It's
We do it for others, but we so seldom do it for ourselves.
yes. And I get looking back at history, sometimes for some people, they don't want to because it was painful and hard. And they don't recognize all the healing that comes when you choose to look back with, you know, compassion for yourself, looking for the hero moments, looking for the way it shaped you. Once you do that, once you recognize that's what happens, you don't need to be afraid to go back and look at it. Because I get it. Like when I'm working with my clients, I don't let them go back and tell me their sob story 6 times. I'm like, okay, you can tell me once, but we're moving forward from there. But you can only tell me once, right? And so I can understand where something came from. But now today, you're you today. Will you choose to move forward today, to do something different, to see that story differently, to see the people in that story differently? Will you make that choice today? And when they say yes, then I know they're ready to move forward.
Exactly. Are you going to be defined by the past and the pain, or are you going to look at it and then feed the light and joy that was also there? Because it's always both. It's never one or the other.
It is, yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say something now that might be controversial to people, but I don't like the word survivor because I think it ties your identity to the pain and the difficult situation. And I know people use that word, you know, as a trophy, a badge to feel good, but I still think subconsciously that it ties your identity, and our identities have nothing to do with that situation. Our identities have to do with how we moved through that situation. And I always hope people can find a better word, than survivor, like thriver. Okay, I'll be a thriver. Like there's so many better words that, don't tie your identity to the difficulty. I mean, I've been through a whole lot of things and I could walk through life thinking I'm a survivor, but that still ties me to being a victim. And so I really have a problem with that word. And I know some people are going to be all pissed off about hearing that when they listen to this podcast, but I'm like, there's got to be a better word that doesn't tie you to that brings you into today and moves you towards your future. Even if that shaped us, because it totally shapes us. So going through chemotherapy definitely shaped me to be is part of my history. Being a sudden widow and single mom of 3 little kids under the age of 7, that shaped me for sure. But I don't even think of myself as a widow. Like it's just like I chose not to.
Well, shape and define are two completely different things.
Oh, good points.
They don't define you.
Mm.
Yes, they shaped you, but they do not need to define you. They can, but they don't need to.
Mm. Okay, that is the quote for the day. Shape and define are two different things. Thank you so much for bringing that up. It's very true. I think that's where I'm having trouble with the word survivor. To me, it feels like a definition, right? Instead of the experience shaped me, and also every dark and horrible experience I ever had not only shaped me, helped me to discover a strength inside myself that I never knew I had. Because I do not believe that what we go through makes us stronger. Nope. I believe that what we go through reveals the strength we've had all along.
And so do our stories.
So do our story.
Sometimes it takes retelling a story in a certain way to see that.
Absolutely. When I did that, I felt like I donned my hero Wonder Woman boots and cape and like arms of I'm like, whoa, wow. Just
Here I
just
go.
taking those bullet points and rewriting them from the hero's perspective. It was like, wow. I just it was like immediate empowerment. And when you're helping people to, look back at their stories and rewrite them in a more empowering way, the surprise thing here that's happening when you do this is that they are healing because you're a life coach, you're not just a writing coach, right? So you're helping them to see this in a certain way and to heal through telling their story. And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I actually want to ask you a question, if
Sure.
that's okay with
Yeah.
you, because I think doing this and seeing it done is what helps people understand it.
Okay.
So I'd love for you to take one of those bullet points, perhaps cancer, perhaps being widowed, whatever it is, and do it like how the being the victim to
Right.
being the hero.
Okay. All right. Absolutely. Yes. Okay. So I'll take one. So the the victim side is poor Linda couldn't have children. She tried and tried with her husband. She went through 5 years of fertility treatments, which involved many needles stuck in my thighs, big one stuck in the back of my hip. The indignity of, showing up at the doctor's with a cup of sperm I had to keep warm and get that, put in there and keep my feet up for the rest of the day. And like doing that many, many times, only to have a molar pregnancy, which required chemotherapy for 5 months, I think that was. And then another 6 month wait before you can even try to get pregnant. Then a blighted ovum. And I didn't remember what the third problem was, but I had 3 pregnancies and no babies. So now poor Linda has to discover like what else can I do to build a family, this family that to everybody else comes easy. They're having sex in the back of cars, they're having babies. How come I can't? I'm on this like 6 year journey and I got no babies over the 6 years. But what do I have? I don't know, 5 or 6 DNCs, like chemotherapy, like a whole bunch of other stuff. That's what I got to show for 6 years. Okay, so this is Linda's hero story. So then, or I mean, victim story. So then I decided to adopt. And so I had to go all the way over to Russia to adopt children. And I had to make 5 trips and it was super duper expensive. And you don't get paid leave when you adopt children, only when you have babies. So that added to it. And yeah, that's what happened. Okay. So that's the victim side of that particular story. So here's the hero side. When I had the blighted ovum and had to go through chemotherapy, I realized that what I had was 99% curable. And I decided to look on the bright side because the girl getting chemo next to me had all her head shaved and a big gash in it from brain surgery because she had brain cancer. Like I chose to see the good fortune in even what I had versus what someone else had. So that's one. Another part of this hero story is when the doctors gave up after 5 years of fertility treatments, right? I still didn't give up. I said, well, there's always adoption. And then I sought out and I made it happen because an international adoption is a year's worth of it's like think about doing a tax return every week. That's how much paperwork I had to do, right? So it was, I'm like, look what I did. I like organized all this. I had to get all this stuff together. I mean, you're getting fingerprinted, you're getting FBI checks, you're getting like, you're certainly not having sex in the back of a car and having babies, but you're doing like, look what I can do. I got it organized. I can do this. Went to Russia 5 times and brought back on different occasions over the years 3 children who are meant to be my children. I am meant to be their mom. And that's the story.
That's the story,
That's the
right?
story. Yeah,
And then they all have their own stories
they do. They do.
of
Yeah.
being loved.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And so that's why story is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Because you said so many things in that. There were so many pieces of where you come through of who you really are. You were meant to be a mother. You were meant to love those children. They were meant to be yours.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. It's so true. And it's really a story about perseverance. That's
Yeah.
what the story's about,
It's about you just making a decision and following through no matter what.
right?
There were
Yeah.
so many there were so many places that you could stop.
Oh, yeah. And I chose not to. I'm like,
And you
I,
chose not to.
perseverance over difficulty, tenacity to meet the goal that I wanted to have a family. And I wasn't giving up.
And curiosity. How can I make this work?
Right. How can I? And yeah, that's actually a big part of the process. Like I have a process, and you're doing it through autobiography. I have a process through something called Power Shift on my website, which is like video workbook, video workbook, video workbook. And I I share what I did, how I rewrote my story, but in the middle, so like there's the before and there's the after, but the middle video and the middle workbook is really about the how did I escape from victimville, right? And the word how is this magical question. So if I hadn't asked myself, how can I get out of this place? If I had, how can I, children? How can I persevere? How can I? If I hadn't asked how, I wouldn't have moved forward. So you got to get yourself to how. But what gets in the way of the how is the disbelief. It's not going to work. It's going to be too hard. That can't happen for me. Those things. If that's where you are, you won't get to how can I? So I love in the work that you're doing as well. You're probably revealing that for people so that they can see how they did.
And they don't, one of the joys of doing it through writing
Mhm.
and write the way that the process that I use works is we use themes and prompts and all sorts of support on how to get this, what story to tell and how to get it out.
Mhm.
And they go through and they write the story. They don't realize they're showing themselves the how, but it comes out loud and clear. One of my classes is called Pieces and Patterns,
Mhm.
because when you look at the pieces of your life over the course of your life, that pattern comes out loud and clear.
Mhm. For sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Whenever we look back, so we got to not be afraid to look back and see, that's the beginning, the awareness.
If we're still here, we succeeded.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, let's briefly touch base about, like people have heard me if they've listened to my podcast mention that my late husband, the one who died when my kids were really little, um, was an alcoholic. And so that was another part of my victim story, right? It's a full-time job trying to hide alcoholism from your family and your own children, right? So like that was a hard thing. Um, and for a long time, I didn't want to share that story. I was concerned, what will my kids think? Right? What will other people think of me? Like, is there shame in the fact that I stuck it out? Like, there's so many things that come up. What do you see when you're writing, when you're helping your clients write? And they're like, well, I can't tell that story. Like, give me some experiences and what you do to help them through that.
So many people have that. And so I do both classes and personal guiding with people, writing their stories. And one of the things that is always so important, and whether you're working with me one on one or in a group, you read your story out loud. And
Mm,
these stories can be really hard. Some of them are more surface, some of them grow really deep. The thing that everybody realizes, Linda, is even when they're telling a story that they think, I could never admit this to my children. Um, but they write the story and they see the evolution. And the thing that I always say is your story is absolutely unique. There is there's so much richness and growth and interest in your story, and it's very unique. But the feelings are universal.
such a great point.
And that's the gold in sharing your story, even with one person, is that they're all relatable. I can relate to your story, even though it wasn't mine,
Mhm.
because we all have places of shame or guilt or embarrassment. So it's relatable.
Yeah.
Even, I didn't have to go through your story to understand that.
Right.
And when you start writing your stories and just getting it out on paper, some of that stuff that you've carried for so long and held so tight because you don't want anybody to know that about you. When you get it out, there's just a sense of relaxation of like, oh, it's not so bad. This other person, or these other people all said, wow, thank you for sharing. I
Right.
find that relatable.
And that is the ripple effect. That is, you could see on my little thing down here, it says Linda Bucher, ripple maker, right? We're all ripple makers. And through telling and sharing our stories, not only are we healing ourselves, discovering who we are so that we can move forward with intention, but we're also in that relatability, helping other people to do the same. And that's the ripple effect of sharing your story.
It is, and it's what our world needs. We need people to show up and show their bravery of telling their story, of
Mhm.
being the hero
Yeah.
and saying, it wasn't always easy. What you're seeing is the polished version of me. There's another version.
Yeah.
We all have that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now let's just talk a little bit about because our little topic today is about using your past to shape a meaningful future. So let's talk a little bit more about the future, about how do we use this past, right? Because you're discovering who you are. And that's when I'm working with clients, that's like our main starting point along with repairing sense of worthiness, because a lot of people have a degraded sense of worthiness. So that and discovering who you are, we're doing that kind of at the same time. Because that's how do you know what you want and where you're going to go if you don't know who you are today? And if you don't separate your identity from your past and instead understanding how it's shaped you and what it reveals about you, right? So let's talk about that and how that can inform our future decisions.
Well, when you gain that profound personal insight and understand what I just talked about, the universal and the particular,
Mhm.
there's a sense of value. You understand who you are and what you value very clearly.
Mhm.
And when you're living your life and can ask questions about moving forward, what are my true values? What are the things that are really important to me? Not to my third grade teacher, not to my grandmother, not to, the person at the coffee shop. What's really important to me? And you can use that and you see that because over a lifetime, you live your values. And so when you look back and you see what you have valued throughout your life, who you are, it gives you a basis to move forward. And often I work quite a bit with people midlife and beyond. Up until that point, a lot of your life has been lived based on somebody else's idea of the perfect life.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a time to actually step back, take stock, and understand who you are and what you want to take forward.
Mhm. And it's such an empowering place to be when you are being deliberate in moving forward in a way that is true to you. I say something that maybe someday will be a famous quote by Linda Bucher. Maybe if I say it enough, that'll happen. And it's called this. It goes like this. When you wrap what you're doing and how you're doing it around who you are, happiness and success will meet you there.
That's what we're talking about.
And it's a way, success and happiness, they're a way of moving. They're not destinations, they're a way of moving through the world. When you move through the world in alignment with your values, with your worthiness, right? And with your gifts.
Yes, and you know what they are, and your stories know what they are. Sometimes we look external, but
Mm,
by writing your stories, you realize you know
yeah.
specifically. And sometimes we just need God, you know, we need help being guided and supported and motivated to do that because
Yeah,
it's hard to do on our own.
it is. It
It's
is.
possible. Doing a life review is very possible to sit down and do on your own, but sometimes having somebody else and knowing who has a process, a
Right.
successful process of way of doing it so that you feel guided, supported, and motivated is really helpful.
Yes, of course, absolutely. Um, you know, it's interesting. Clients come to me or come to you because they don't want to try to do it all on their own. They're smart, they're intelligent, they probably read a ton of books, they've listened to a bunch of podcasts, right? They're like, I'm smart and capable and I'm going to do it. And then they get as far as they can. But you and I are experts, we're trained differently. I've been doing this 17 years. I don't know how long you've been doing this. So,
Long time.
a while, right? So, at some point, people are like, I'm ready to go even further than I can take myself, right? So if a listener is feeling compelled, like, and if you've ever said, like, I think I should write my life story, or maybe I feel like I got to get something out, right? This would be the time to work with you because, like you said, the process of trying to do it on your own is daunting, overwhelming. Where do I start, right? And plus, when someone does it on their own, even though there's naturally healing and looking back, especially with some of the tools we've already shared today, it's not the same as a process. I know you have a process that breaks it down and makes it much more palatable, much more interesting. And so, I encourage people to reach out to you if they feel compelled to write their life story. But right now, I'm going to ask you, is there something really short? So, dear listener, before you go, wow, that was the best podcast ever, let me listen to another one. Like in between podcast listening, what is something that someone could do in just a few minutes today to begin this little journey of using their past to shape their future?
So I'm just going to share something that's super simple. It's almost like your bulleted list, but even shorter.
Mhm.
Um, and you do this and just give yourself 10, 20 minutes. We get overwhelmed with the idea of writing our life story. That feels like, wow. But there's all sorts of ways to tell your story. And I'm just going to share a really quick one. So if you just sat down and did a bulleted list of 5, I felt totally alive moments. Just write a list of these throughout. And for some people, it's really hard and they have to think back and think, oh my gosh, it was at my friend's 10th birthday party.
Mhm.
Um, but really just open up, and one way to do it, and we do this a lot in guided autobiography, we think in chunks. So from ages 1 to 10, what is one I felt totally alive moment? From ages 10 to 20, what was one I felt totally alive moment? From age 20 to 30. So just break it down so it's not so overwhelming. And then once you've done that, for each one, just note what value is present. The value could be fun. The value could be perseverance. The value could be, They run the gamut. And then also note the strength you used.
Mhm.
What, where, what was it? Was it humor? Was it being silly? Was it being persistent? What was the strength that you used? And in just doing that with five simple, I felt totally alive moments, one from each decade of your life, you'll have a very short little autobiography.
What a beautiful process. And I think you've broken it down and made it very easy for a listener to be able to do this. So thank you, Lisa. And just because we're talking about how this will shape your future, I will share, and I'm sure you could share the same thing, that every day I have multiple totally alive moments because now, like, so I don't have to think like, what's one? I'm like, what's one today? Like every time I do a podcast, I feel totally alive. Every time I meet with someone who I'm just, like I have like a free chat, and you don't have to hire me. That's not what that's about. Just like I had one yesterday with a gentleman, and I was just like, oh, this I feel so alive just because I got to help in that moment. Every time I work with a client, every time I hang out with my husband because he's hilarious and we have the best time all the time, no matter what we're doing. I feel alive when I'm cooking dinner in the kitchen. So like, because I've gone through this process in a little different way than what you're sharing, but saying the same process. This is the proof that on the other side, now that I know who I am, I'm aligned with my values, I know my gifts, I've aligned them to what I do every day, and I've shed what doesn't fit me. Then these alive moments are the moments you're living in life, and your experience of this part of your life moving forward then will be a whole different experience. Now you'll look back and you'll be like, man, my life was alive. So this
I
is
love
the
it.
happy ending. Woo! And it's not an ending, it's just a way of moving. So yeah, beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. Um, I would like to ask you now. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, like, and they want to talk to you more about this, like, what can they do?
So the easiest thing to do is to reach out to me through my website. It's lisaculhane.com. Very easy. lisaculhane.com. lisaculhane.com. I offer, just like you, Linda, because I love it, an opportunity to chat with me for 15 to 30 minutes. So click on, get in touch with me. Let's chat. Let's talk about whether coaching or guided autobiography or whatever it is you need to chat about. Let's chat about it. Because that is one of my alive moments too, is helping people. Sometimes I can just offer one quick thing that they can do that gets them through the next 30 days, and that's all they needed. But
Beautiful.
whatever it is, however I can help, I'm so happy to do that. Happy to share how guided autobiography can help you. Even if you just want to get your stories out to share in a way that feels authentic, we can do
Beautiful. Well, I'll put the link to your website in the show notes for the listeners. So thank you so much. All right. And I have what I mentioned it earlier. I have something called Power Shift on my website under the pick your path. What pathway do you want to take? Power Shift is a DIY pathway. You don't have to hire me as a coach. You just go DIY that all by yourself and go through my process for moving out of that life happened to me into I'm happening to life. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. Okay, so that's our show. Thank you so much, Lisa. You've been
that. Oh,
a
Linda, thank you. What a delight.
thank you. It has been a delight. All right, and so, dear listener, if you're sensing that it's time to bring your life into deeper alignment, you can explore what that looks like at lindabucher.com. You'll find direction and clarity on the website. And if today's episode sparked something for you, please share it with someone who might need it. And then subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Then join me next week for another expansive, uplifting conversation designed to support your growth. And until next time, make sure that you've made this conversation worth your while by fueling the spark that it ignited.